Time now for the Inside Utah Politics panel discussion. This week we have former Hinckley Institute Director Kurt Jowers and University of Utah Associate Professor Tim Chambliss. Gentlemen, great to have you with us. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you, Glenn.
Boy, a lot of talk nationwide. We have the Democrats front and center. We've seen the debates. People growing frustrated with some of the rhetoric they're beginning to hear. Let's start off with digging into this idea of extreme voices. What role are they playing on the national level? Kirk, let's start with you.
Well, unfortunately, you start with President Trump. You always vow, I'm just never going to mention his name. Let's have a discussion without him. But this question begs the question that he was elected by taking a very different tack to the presidency, different in the primary than anyone had ever taken, different than McCain or Romney had taken when they tried to defeat Barack Obama. And his worked, and there's a lot of factors into that. But this loud voice is also being seen over in Europe as well. And now you've got this Democratic field that is 20 plus, and they're scrambling to be heard, scrambling to distinguish themselves from the field. And Trump's extremist kind of ways of doing things are right now, you know, the Sun Tzu last battle.
When you take a look at these debates, it's almost like all of them are centered on getting in that zinger so that they can stand out in some way.
And there's a reason why, because every one of the 20 plus candidates who are seeking the Democratic Party nomination believe that if he or she can get that nomination, he or she is going to be the president in 2021.
But are they beating each other up too much to getting to that point?
It's certainly combative, verbally combative. We've seen this just in the past week.
Republicans, I think, are enjoying this immensely because you have the moderates who are really taking aim and saying a lot of the things Republicans would like to say about the new Green Deal, the Medicaid for all, and education, higher education for everyone, and how that's unreasonable. And so now you've got Democrats saying that makes the argument a lot easier in the general.
As I listen to the rhetoric nationally now, and I think back to when I was growing up, you know, 80s and 90s, things have changed so much. So I want to ask you guys this question. How do we even define party values in this country anymore? Kirk, let's start with you with the Republican Party.
Well, I think this is a difficult time to answer that question for the Republicans, probably the most difficult ever. Because
that's why I'm asking it.
So President Trump is the President of the United States, and he is a Republican. And so he is the bully pulpit. He is the standard bearer for Republicans. A lot of the policy he voices, I think, do fit comfortably within the Republican Party. I would hope the way he says it and some of the other, and the tone and everything else, the divisiveness, at times the racism and other things, it has nothing to do with the Republican Party. But if Republicans don't speak out in favor and against, when appropriate, against him, he essentially becomes the voice of the Republican Party.
Tim, define the values of the Democratic Party right now.
Well, I would say the Republican Party is no longer the party of Abraham Lincoln. It's the party of Trump. And he's polling at no more than 45%. That's very problematic for Republicans as we move to the next election. The Democratic Party has been the party historically of inclusion, of accepting minorities, of being the party that welcomes, that sees diversity as a strength. Right now we see the party itself with so many candidates being quite fragmented.
Let's get your view of the Democratic Party now. What do you see their values standing out?
Right now, some of the leading candidates, with the exception of Biden, have got proposals that are so far left, and I agree with the moderates in those debates that it would have no chance to win. They think they can beat Trump. I think they've got no chance to beat Trump if you have Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren. That is not where the country wants to go, no matter how radical and damaging some of Trump's rhetoric can be. The policies are what's going to follow the country. So the Democrats had better work that out, or they may be shocked yet again.
Do you agree with that? Elizabeth Warren or Bernie Sanders would be a losing ticket?
It would probably be a losing ticket, but the ideas they're presenting are very viable ideas as we consider everything that could possibly be legislation in the future. But in order to win in this country, the American people, I think, are basically moderate to maybe even right of center. And so you need to have candidates, regardless of race or gender, who identify with the vast majority of voters in this country.
Kirk, your thoughts on that? Does the average American relate to what we're seeing at the top of both parties right now?
No, and I think the polls bear that out. I mean, Utah was pretty interesting. Only 38% of Utahns, a Republican state, support Trump's reelection right now. Now,
and only 45% of them voted for him in 2016.
Right, and you know, you compare that to Mitt Romney winning by, I think, 48 points. So that's the difference between, you know, Trump and someone like a McCain or a Romney.
Okay, let's jump to the governor's race for 2020. It's an interesting one. Right now, only one official candidate in Lieutenant Governor Spencer Cox. But a poll released by the Salt Lake Chamber during the week shows Spencer Cox slightly ahead of even a John Huntsman if he were to come run. I think they were both in the lower 30s, but had Cox ahead. What do you make of that poll?
The poll, I think, is accurate indicator, although limited with only about 800 in the sample. Lieutenant Governor Cox is in the state. He's known. He's likable. He's approachable. What we've seen with John Huntsman Jr. is that he's been away from the state for 10 years. You know, in China, in Russia, candidate for president, and so as a result, voters have a tendency to forget a little bit.
What impact does Cox being the only official candidate in the race right now have on a poll that would come out?
It's great timing for him. I mean, he's been doing the work. He's been a candidate. He's been on these shows. He's going to each and every city. 268, I believe, is the number that are incorporated cities that he is going to. So, you know, he deserves to get some points right now, but it very much is a moment in time, and if Huntsman enters, people will remember why they liked him or didn't much more clearly. And then you have names like Greg Miller and Spencer Eccles and others who would be incredibly formidable opponents. So we'll see what happens, you know, in 2 months from now when the next poll comes out, when we have a little more solid field.
So let's have former Speaker Greg Hughes, Amy Winder Newton, local county councilwoman Thomas Wright. We're also in this poll pretty far back. Could things change, though, if they become official?
Certainly things can change, but the main two names right now are John Huntsman and the Lieutenant Governor.
What about a guy like Jeff Birmingham, who's not in yet, but he's raising tons of money right now? The last I saw, over 500,000.
He is, so he's going to have a war chest that allows him to get his name out. At the moment, I don't really see the vacuum for him to get there, particularly if someone like a Huntsman, Miller, or Eccles gets in. If it can get down to one-on-one with Spencer Cox, you know, then anything can happen, because people will have to pay attention to him. But if you get one of these higher profile names, no matter how much money, it may be hard to get people's attention away from the two front runners.
He has to be considered just like Jonathan Johnson was a serious candidate back in 2016.
All right, real quick, we have about 30 seconds left, but when we're talking about the national scene and what we're seeing going on there, how might we see that in the local governor's race as well?
That's the most interesting thing I was watching from the two debates this week. There's this attack by certain members, because it's Joe Biden, who was the vice president of President Obama. President Obama has 95% approval rating among Democrats, and they're attacking some of his policies because they need to drag Biden into the scrum, and right now he's above them.
So we might see that with Cox and Herbert as well?
And that's exactly the point, is Cox may have to defend you know, his record with Herbert, as well as his vision for the future and why he didn't get that done these last, you know.
All right, I'm unfortunately out of time. Real quick.
We have no Democratic announced candidate for governor.
Yeah, that is a true point. All right, gentlemen, great conversation. Thanks so much for being here. Appreciate it.